Hey everyone, my name's Pete Rosano and I am with the WPA, and it is my distinct pleasure to share the stage today with Jim Dougherty, somebody who's a legend, an icon, and an all-around fantastic guy. I didn't know how much of a fantastic guy he was until we started chatting, and then I realized, wow, he's awesome. So Jim, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Everybody, just so you know, Jim's got a booth right here in the New Product Showcase with his latest project, Pet Project. This book is really a collection of over 60 interviews with other folks who got the pleasure to work with Jim and really go through this journey with him. So it's not just Jim pontificating, which is kind of fun too, but this is also, it contains lots of other great information that we all could learn from as retailers. So, to begin with, I want to read something from the book. This is part of an excerpt from Phil Francis's foreword. From the beginning, Jim understood the importance of listening to customers and meeting their needs. He also knew that once you truly understood your customer, you could create their needs as well. Like all truly great brands, there was a symbiotic relationship between the brand and the customers. Customers were constantly shaping the way PetSmart did business, and PetSmart was constantly shaping the way customers thought about their pets. So, talk to me about listening to your customers.
Well, it goes back, you have to go all the way back to the 80s, especially in the pet industry. Everything sold in a pet store was a professional food. The customers were in the grocery store and they were buying grocery products, dog chow, meal time. So when we started, we had to go talk to the customers and figure out how that fit into our program. Our whole emphasis was if we could get them out of the grocery store and into our store, passing by all the product that we have, they can buy their dog chow, but we'll have manufacturers to upgrade the person as they go. And they might not do it the first time, maybe they'll do it down the road. So customers kept giving us input. One of the first things we had to do, we had to change our store hours, not be a pet store. We had to open at 9 and close at 9. Then we allowed them to bring their pets in the store. Things that never do it. Instead of selling dogs, we did adoptions in the store. And I don't know of anybody at that time that was doing adoptions in the store, and it became very, very big, and you got a lifetime customer. So anything that you can do when you communicate with your customer, I could get on a tangent here, but I would just tell you, when a customer comes in your store, their first impression is where they have to park. Is your front door clean? And when they open it, if your front door is clean and everything is in order, their mind is open. If your door is dirty, and there's been a lot of them, you and I we're all customers, whether it's pet or whatever it is, it kind of goes on from that, and they look to see if the things are clean or in order, how you would address them. You know, I go in pet stores all the time, and they'll say, I'll be looking for something, they say, well, it's back in the corner back there, just move that stuff out of the way. That's not what a customer wants. So you have to, that's the most valuable thing in retail, and I think if in fact people looked at their store as a customer opposed to as an owner, that you probably would make some changes, and even ask the customer. You got to do it. You have to build a community within your business area, and all of us have different type retail stores. They're all different pet. They're all in different markets. You have to know your market. You know, sometimes we get too focused, and I'm going on here.
Keep going. This is great.
Sometimes we get too focused on price and not service. And sometimes as a customer, which we are, it's not the price sometimes. It's what do I get when I come back next time? Do you deliver? Are you online? Whatever it might be. In today's world, and when I started back there, we didn't have computers. Now they got online people selling pet products. So PetSmart will probably have a tough time today. I will tell you, and I'm going on here a little bit. back in the day, PetSmart was not liked by a lot of people in pet industry because they thought we were taking business away from small pet stores. It was never the intent. Did it overlap? I'm sure it did. But it overlapped the other way also if you had a clean store. So after I retired, I kept hearing the same thing, and I said, well, I'm going to go out and put a chain together called Petsense, and we're going to do small stores, and we're going to run them across the country. And we did that, and we were extremely successful. We went right in next to it. We'd go in a Walmart shopping center, and we'd bring the customer in and treat them like a customer, and they would come back, and it was very successful. So it can be done, but it takes a mindset. It takes a customer mindset. There's just really no way around it. In Arizona this last summer, I guess we're still in it, some of the big retailers were concerned about the heat and would customers come in and all that. So what we did is sat down and talked with some of them, a group of us, and said, look, why don't you have 1 day delivery, a hot day, or if you live in Colorado and it's snowing and people don't want to go out, have a delivery service. The customer's not coming in, but they're also not buying it online. So, you know, if you buy a bag of dog food online in the summertime and it comes to Arizona, it's going to be sitting in a truck for about 4 days, and we all know what weevils look like. I mean, it's going to be bad. And the same thing if it goes in the snow. So there's just, sometimes you just got to go beyond what you hear about customers in the pet industry and move it out. There's some really, really, really good retailers right now that are bringing in customers through either a dog wash or grooming or both, or a vet, or you can get vets that will come and visit your store. You just sign a contract with them once a week or once a month, and your customers will know when that's there. That gets them into the store, and that's the key.
So that was a lot of information, and it's great information. I think it goes back to a bunch of points that you like to bring up that are covered in the book that has to do with basically meeting your customers where they are, figuring them out, looking through their eyes, and so that you're not only listening to your customers, but you're actually becoming your own best critic, best shopper, best customer. The store starts, if there's available parking. Now the store starts electronically based on where they find you, how they make that connection to get to your store. And you're still doing that today with hot days, 1 day delivery. That's awesome, cutting edge stuff. I appreciate that. As a former retailer for 30 years, we had similar types of perspectives. So talking to Jim is very familiar. It's a good thing. And the lessons that I learned just from a few of the excerpts from the book are valid today, were valid 30 years ago, and can be applied to any size business, single store, multi-store, large format. Convenience, customer experience. You had the 5 strategies, right? Adjusting the grocery store hours was one of the things you just mentioned. Allowing the pets in the stores, again, kind of revolutionary back then for that kind of format. And then having a conscience, doing the ethical thing with adoptions. So of these things, what really made PetSmart and Petsense such success stories?
The customer was hungry at the time. All they ever saw was Geisler, and these are the same people that are buying today. And you guys just open it up with all kinds of product, so they have a selection now. They like to treat their pet a lot better than they did. I mean, they were still living in the backyard when we started PetSmart. I mean, they kind of moved up. So it's ground zero is the customer, and it's just whatever way it is. We all have brains. We all kind of think different ways, and you own your market. You just have to figure out a way. And you know what? You're going to fail. It's just growing. That's all it is. You're going to fail. Nobody else tries that. You shift it a little bit, and you shift it a little bit more. About 3 times, go to something else.
So could you give us a specific example of a failure And what did you do? How did you navigate that?
Well, two, both PetSmart, Petsense. PetSmart originally, the boxes were going to be in a grocery store that had gone out of business. And we were going to go in and lease those and build them up. And we did that for probably 10 stores. But that wasn't where the customer was. I mean, it was a grocery store that went out. The numbers worked out, but the volume didn't. So we had to switch strategies and go into a store that had a grocery store that a woman shopped at maybe 4 times a week. So you have to get that traffic. The second one is Petsense. Petsense was originally going to be a overrun. So if Purina did a 50-pound bag of dog chow instead of a 40, they would have pallets and pallets of it left, and you would buy it, and you would have overrun. You do with shampoos and everything. The problem was the team that we had were ex-PetSmart people, and even the buying was a whole different thing. So it was a great idea, but our team wasn't fit for that. So we shifted back to doing the small stores in each city, and it worked out for the best because originally we weren't going to carry dog food because of you have to walk all the way to it and walk it back, and that's the first way to get the customer to hate you. So that's it. But you know, there's just been so many failures. I mean, I'm just not one that I'm phased too much by that, unless it costs a lot of money, and then I'm phased in a bank account. But and the same with associates. When you hire people, when we first hired for PetSmart, the key wasn't whether you knew the pet industry. The key was whether you had a pet. And if you had a pet, we could teach you everything else, and you had the heart, and you understood what we were trying to get across. And manufacturers at that time would come in and train our associates, and we would little badge, and each time they did a dog, cat, bird, they would get a bump and pay. But also when there was a promotion, they would go to the top of the list. So they get excited about doing that. So.
Nice. So just a brief aside, how many of you all are retailers? A show of hands. How many of you are retailers with fewer than 5 stores? And is there any retailer out here with more than 10? Okay. Just wanted to get an idea who we're talking to so we know what's relevant to you all. So you talk about successes and failures and how you learn from your failures, you adjust, you course correct. I would like to hear about a success that you had no idea was going to be a success. Maybe you were even opposed to it, but you tried it. Like, are there any surprise successes that were like, because you adjusted your hours, you allowed dogs? What else was like surprising to you?
I would say putting grooming in with a glass window. Because prior to this, back in the 80s, 70s and 80s, you'd drop your dog off and they'd go in the back room somewhere and they would scrub it, and you'd come in later and you'd pick it up. So when we put in the window where they could actually watch the pet being groomed, the word spread pretty fast. The general rule of thumb is that every customer has 5 friends. And you do something bad, they're going to tell them 5 good friends, and then you do something good. In the pet, it jumps up to 10, because if you're out walking your dog and somebody else is walking and they say, hey, that collar and lead's pretty nice, where'd you get it? So if you take care of everybody, you're multiples. So what we were surprised about was customers would come back in and say, well, I was on a dog wash, and they said I could come in. I don't know if you guys have been there and seen the big window where they groom. You can look in there. It's not a big deal. I think the groomers weren't happy with it at first because they didn't want people watching them, but it's become a norm. But our customers, when we did a survey, they heard about it from a friend. So it was just something new, and I just didn't think it was going to be that big. And even grooming back in the 80s was a little iffy. Grooming's pretty good in today's world. I mean, they train better. Everything's a lot better. But back then it was very tough even to get a groomer.
Yeah. Also, in the stores that I ran, we had grooming, and I can only imagine the pushback we would have gotten if we said there's going to be a window. because not only is it they're going to watch me, but then I got to keep my room clean. It's another judge point with your customer that you're going to have to live up to your standards. That's one of the things that I think if you're going to have standards, it starts outside your store, goes through the store, all the way into the grooming room. Let's open it up. Let's let people see. I think that was a brave decision to try it, and I'm not surprised that it was successful. But it takes hard work, right? Because you have to keep the standards.
And then you have to test it. You got to pay for it. You got to test it. You can't just test it in one store. You can't get a read off of just one or one state. You know, you have to test around a little bit. Maybe what didn't work in one will work in another.
Yep. And total plug here, the WPA is coming out with a PGC program, the Professional Grooming Credential, which is just part of that whole elevation of the industry as a whole. Yeah, when you started off, the dogs were outside more. Not only are they inside, they're in your bed pretty much. How many people sleep with their dogs? Yeah, so
Awesome.
that's a big change. But you didn't start in pet. You started off after your service, thank you. You went into, I think, bicycles, you had told me?
Yeah, I had, at one time, I had a chain of bicycle stores in San Diego. I had a bobcat company. We were digging swimming pools. They were the Narrow 700s. And had a hydroponic alfalfa business. And I had they didn't have online stuff. They had mail order business back then. And I had a mail order stethoscope business. And I tried everything, you know.
And what brought you to pet?
I actually got hired by a company. The guy was the mayor of Del Mar, California. I did a lot of work with the Chargers, with bikes and football team. And I got interviewed, and it was Universal Feed, and they were in Colty, California. And he said, "Look, I've rented a building in Las Vegas," and he said, "I want to put in this pet supply." I didn't know anything about the business at all. I want to put it in. I went and looked at the building. It was at the end of a dead-end road. Actually, it was like a little cul-de-sac. It was the end of it, and it was behind the lumberyard. So we had to put a sign out with a big arrow, and it was back. And it was kind of a pet, but there was feed because they were a manufacturer of feed. So we did feed, pet. I don't know that anybody had done that at that time. It was extremely successful. We wound up putting 2 or 3 other ones in. But they bought another milling company, and all the bonuses they didn't come through. And I'm going to tell you, the Tatros own that. They're a great family. They just got themselves in a tight situation, and so I decided I was going to go out and start something on my own. I knew enough people in the industry. We found out through Las Vegas that this is a customer-driven business, and I actually brought on a couple of guys. I got to tell you, I did not go to college. I went in the Marine Corps. I got thrown in. If you read in the book, we were from a very deprived family, and senior year, my dad threw me in the Marine Corps in the 60s, Vietnam. So everything I learned in the Corps about social. I wore my dad's clothes to school. I mean, we were in pretty bad shape. So any social gatherings or like that, it was all done in the Marine Corps. When you get in the Marine Corps, you show up, they give you a haircut, and they give you green fatigues, and everybody looks the same. And that's the way it should be. And then you work from there. If you do what you're supposed to do, you will move on in the Corps. You'll stay alive. If you don't, you're not going to probably in Vietnam. You're not going to stay alive. So everything I learned was there. So I don't know. I mean, I could go on, but I got a lot of that in the book. It's very interesting. I have my daughter and my grandkids here, and I do everything to make sure they're educated and everything to make sure that they're secure. And their future looks really good. I mean, it's not about, when you get older, not about us anymore. It's about them. God help us.
So, yeah, okay, awesome. Like I told you, he's a great guy, aside from the business side. And when you started off, what was your biggest challenge? You opened your doors. Did you open more than one store initially?
Two.
Two at the same time. which has some synergies where you could buy for both. You could have better deals for construction. And you may even, I don't know if you had the same landlord. So you thought about that. How long before you opened your third store? And was
Probably a year.
And was it you were learning from your first two? You made some adjustments?
The first one at 19th Avenue and Bell was a home run. You know, the one that we put in Tempe, the logistics where it was were not the same. It was in a shopping center, but we took over an old shopping center, so we were the anchor, and that doesn't work. So we had to get the bugs out, and we had to train the people up. The biggest issue we have, and I don't think in this world, because when I started Petsense it had changed, is that we couldn't buy any product from anybody in the pet industry because we were classified as a grocery store. I don't know how they ever figured that one out, but so we couldn't, nobody would sell us. So if we get product, we divert it in, they would, I don't want to get anybody in trouble here. The distributor would bring in the manufacturer and say, if this is in here Monday, you're losing all the retail account. So nobody would sell to us. Didn't stop us. It just deterred us a little bit because we knew if we got the numbers up, then it would work. And we knew the numbers were there because of a previous thing. So we diverted and diverted and diverted, and it pissed everybody off. Excuse my language. And what happened was, back in today's world, you can't do that because they have computer system and codes and they can tell where it was sent to. And we diverted in. We'd try to at least do 2 stores in the market so we could bring it in. We had tall steel at that time, and you could ship it out to the other stores or carry it out. So that was probably the biggest. When I came back, so as our numbers got big, so can I tell one story?
Oh yeah, please.
So as we're growing, we're trying to get back then it was IAMS, Nutro, Science Diet. I think that was it. But so I remember the IAMS guy coming in and he says, you know what, you're going to have to make your store so it's dominant professional food. So we're going to give you a parameter, and if you do that, we'll sell you direct. And I looked at him and I said, you're telling me all the customers that are coming in and buying dog chow will no longer be able to buy it here? He says, that's right. I said, well, how are they going to get your food? Who is going to convert them if they're going to do it? That was the whole key to success of PetSmart, is converting the grocery customer over. And it worked quite well because they were hungry for it. So that was one of the dumbest conversations I've ever been in with a CEO of a large. He had no answer for me. He said, well, this is what we're going to do. And I said, well, we'll just keep diverting it. So
I love that. It's one of the things that I learned from PetSmart as a retailer was walking in and seeing that grocery aisle or two and understanding. At first I thought, oh, he's catering to different people. And it took me a while to catch on to the idea that you have to meet people where they are. And if they're doing this grocery stuff right now, great. And then you can have a conversation. You can't have that conversation with them if you don't have them in your store and talking to your educated employees. And that's something else you were really good at, was bringing in the vendors to educate the employees.
Yep. And watch them grow.
Yeah. I'd like to shift the conversation for a minute. I noticed that there are a bunch of manufacturers or exhibitors here too, and I was wondering your thoughts or your advice on bringing a product to market today. There's so many decisions to be made, so many avenues to choose. What's your advice on how to bring a product into the market?
Well, there's a couple of good consulting companies in the industry, and there's a couple of really bad ones. And when I talk, I'm right from the top. I mean, there's a couple of really bad ones out there. Some people have spent $100,000 and have got nothing. I think probably, usually there's 2 classes of people. Somebody that has a lot of money, but has a bad product. Somebody that has a really good product but has no business sense. And it's really tough to get somebody to do something that's out of their box. Even though it's new, the enthusiasm is there. Nobody wants to see another bowl or another ball. I mean, it's got to be creative. And creative is where the industry now, and I'm very proud of it. I think we're getting we're getting some really, really good products in now. And we're getting some good young talent. We're getting some really good talent in here. With the good comes the bad. This is part of life. So I would say, you know, I don't really ever charge anybody anything. I love the industry, and if I can help somebody again, and I know there's some people here, I've talked to them today that I've helped, I'm okay. So anytime that anybody who wants to give me a call or an email, I can kind of refer a few people that I consider to be very honest, and will give you straight answers. They're not salespeople. You don't want a salesman. This is your life that you're getting into. So I think probably the first thing you should do is check the category. There's a gentleman in our industry named John Gibbons. John's not here. He's very sick today, actually he's in Colorado. And he can give you analytics on that category. He can give you, there's guys out there that can give you dollars per square inch that you need on that shelf. Now these are the bigger boxes that they need, and you have to reduce the size of your package or you have to get your margin up. There's people that can do that. And then you really start to look at your product. I would highly suggest in the pet industry today that if it's possible, to be American made. I don't know if we're there yet, but there are some good manufacturers here. I don't know competitive-wise, I'm just not in that arena, but I do know the customers, and when I go into PetSmart or Petco, I mean, I got a ball cap and jeans and shorts. I don't ever tell anybody who I am. And customers want American products. So that just, for whatever that's worth, I think if they don't find it there, they might find somewhere else, or maybe they won't.
So you're talking about data and analytics. It sounds like you do your research. What are the various ways to do that research for when you were starting off with? I'm sure that your sources changed drastically between founding PetSmart and founding Petsense because it was a completely new world as far as data and information. What's your advice for where to find it? John's a great source, John Gibbons, like you mentioned. Where are the other places where they should be looking? Did you do for store locations? What would be a typical analysis?
Well, WPA has some pretty good, just recently. I mean, you saw what John Gibbons put out.
Yeah.
And WPA puts out, and this is recent. He's WPA, but I will tell you, when I first got in the industry, I didn't know what the hell these guys even did. I mean, they were WPA, we all knew who they are. Well, what do? They put a show on. Well, I've got into it here in the last year and a half. These guys have a lot of great programs, especially for starting out, but ongoing, great programs that I didn't even know existed. And they're coming from somebody within the industry. Other than that, you just have to, it's always good to network. And there are some people that don't like to network, but the more people you network with, the more information you get and the more information you can share with them. We all kind of have our little groups, but sometimes you have to get outside of that a little bit. And you can come to the show and you can kind of see what's CBD. I mean, CBD is really hot, but there's a lot of it out there. I mean, it's everywhere. So on both sides, on the human side and this side. So the evolution of the industry is just going to keep going. I mean, it's getting, for all you guys, and I see a lot of little old timers out there. I mean, it is really, really peril.
So I love the idea of using the WPA as a means of networking. Thank you for that. And I did not pay him to say that. But for looking at like a new store location, would you network with the Chamber of Commerce? Would you would you go in and look at demographics from a different perspective? Like, how do you pick? You said that you learned, and it's kind of like you kind of wrote the book for us. Thank you very much. You learned that you don't want to be the anchor. You want a grocery store anchor. You want families. So primary shopper for groceries in the family is often women, and then there's children, and then there's pets, and then they all can come in the store. So you learn, those are a couple of the drivers. I know that what we used to look at is this on the commute to work side of the street or the commute home side of the street? Is it convenient to stop in? And who are your co-anchors or co-tenants, and what's the synergies there? Did you have any other pearls in there to share?
Yeah. So the reason, a lot of people ask, how did PetSmart ever get to Arizona? Actually, the stores I did for the Tetros, one was here in this town, Las Vegas, and then we opened one in Arizona. But I think the best way to do it, the way we got in Arizona is we went to the SAMI. And the SAMI report tells you everything that the grocery is selling, everything. So you can get a good read, because most people buy their food, at that time anyway, in the grocery store. You can go there and you can tell what's and how much, the tonnage that's coming into that market, whether there's something enough there to support what you're getting ready to do. So the SAMI would be, I haven't looked at one in years, so I'm not too sure how it is now, but I'm sure they're still there. So that would give you the tonnage, and you can break that down. So in your mind, you have to say, if I could convert 50% of them, what's my store going to look like? Or 25%, or we used to do all that kind of stuff. So that would be one. You hit a really good point. Besides cleaning your window, customers, I don't care what kind of store you're going to. You don't have to go into a parking lot where you can't park in front. You got to park out. You got to walk in, especially if you got dog food, and there's no ramp to walk down. You got to step down. All those things. When the guy's giving you a price in the building, you're thinking of the lower price and not the convenience of the customer. And you want it on the same side of the street that they're driving up. So if you don't want to have something on the opposite side where they have to go up and around, or they have to make a U-turn and come back. The convenience of parking. Hey, I'm telling you what, every one of you has said, gee, I need milk, but I'm not going to go in there today because that's a hassle going in. I'll get it some other time. That's exactly what happens. You got to make everything as convenient, and even your signage got to be convenient. So and co-tenant would be good if you get something that gets a lot of traffic. Women are great shoppers. My wife, I know she's here, loves to shop. Where are you? No, there she is. Yeah.
So signage is another big thing, right? Visibility, and now visibility means everything, including digital. What were some of your success stories with regard to marketing, or did you use coupons? What were some of your marketing strategies that paid off?
Early on, we didn't do too good in the newspaper.
Yeah.
Because nobody, you market science diet around, and we don't even know what it was, because they're all grocery shoppers. So your whole mentality had to change. In a different world today. Online, online's pretty good.
Yeah.
Have a good website, that's very important. Even if you have a small store, if you got customers, now it's like them looking at your store, they're looking at your website, and they're making judgments about what you have, and it's not always price. And you can check all the numbers out. It's not always price they're looking at. They're looking at convenience, they're looking at selection. Do they have what my dog has with the food that he has? Some of the foods kind of get out there sometimes, and you really, I know there's a chain out there now that's just going all strictly high end. And I'm interviewing a guy for the book, and I said, well, how are you going to get new customers? Because if you're just high end and you're not getting that grocery customer in there, how do you get new customers in? He said, well, they'll just talk to their friends. And I said, but what about the millions and millions of people out there that are already buying dog food? They want to get something and they might not come every week. Maybe they just stop by one time and they get in and they like it. Didn't seem to be concerned about it. In my world, I would go, man, I'd never do that.
So I got a question. I'm going to use that as a segue to say, okay, of all the customers, he's only targeting the ones that are already in this space and not the full range of them. And for our audience here, who's both on the retail side and on the manufacturing side, or any business side, this question will be relevant to all of you, which is, how did you select your innermost team? What were you looking for the guys that were going to be by your side through each of those endeavors?
When I first started, I learned a very big lesson. and that is whoever works in your store has to have a pet, has to understand it. Let me even a step further. When we went out and tried to get equity money, whenever we talked to somebody that didn't have a pet, now this is in the early days, they didn't have any idea what we're doing. Why would somebody do that? When you talk to somebody that had a pet, they'd lean forward in their desk. All of our investors wound up with companies that had pets. But you have to, if somebody has a pet and they understand the basics of what you're trying to do, you can't overthink this. It's a pet, we're trying to make it happy, we're trying to make it better. You try to overthink it, you're going to get off track. So if you get an employee that understands the value of a pet and what they do and everything, and then you have the manufacturers train them, give training classes. He's a pro at it. He did this in his company back east. I mean, he told me the story and I go, that's incredible. So they already are interested in what's coming across to them because they have pets. Instead of, you can talk to somebody about dog food, if they don't have pets, what the hell are you talking about? You know, so that's the key. That's the key.
Gotcha.
Tell them your story.
Oh, so we had, as we grew, because we started off as I was hired to be the president of a 6-store chain, and as we were growing, the stores, became further and further spread out over several states, and it was no longer reasonable for us to drive around training people in person from store to store. It just wasn't working. So what we went out and did was deliberately, we put kiosks in the front of every store, right near the front door. And we had headphones, and employees would go through training all at the same time. Our trainers could be home. This was before Zoom and before Meet and all that. It was GoToMeeting, which was around, and that's 10 years ago or something. And so we would use that platform to train as many people at the same time, and that way we could stay nimble, we could change things on the fly, and deliberately putting the kiosks in the front of the store allowed our customers to walk in and say, what's that guy doing with the headphones on? And we'd say, oh, he's learning right now, he's doing we had 9 hours of nutrition education for dogs and cats. And so he's like, oh, he's taking a nutrition course. Oh, he's taking this course on reptiles, or he's taking that course. And that gave our customers confidence that when they were going to ask a question, they were going to be met with some knowledge and thoughtfulness. And so, yeah. And, Jim did it, helped by using all the vendors. Nobody's more passionate about their product than people who created it and bring it to market. And so they're often the best salespeople to train your salespeople. So that's
a great story.
Thank you. And I wonder, is Paul around? I saw him out there a minute ago. Paul's here with a microphone. Does anybody, and actually Paul's over there, he's coming back. Does anybody I've been asking a lot of questions here and I don't want to have a monopoly on that. Does anyone have any questions for Jim? If you do, raise your hand and Paul will come and let you ask over the microphone so we could all hear it.
Paul's the author of the book. Hey, let me
one over here. Question.
Let me give you one quick story about Paul, if you don't mind. I tried to write this book. You're all going to get this. I tried to write this book about 10 years ago. I could not find an author anywhere that understood the pet industry. I mean, you can't have somebody do it. Paul was a speechwriter for Phil Francis at PetSmart. 5 years, 7 years. So he doesn't know the industry like we do, but he knows it enough that he's talked to enough people now that we've been doing this for a couple of years that he can kind of put it together. The book's kind of interesting, but that was the whole thing, finding somebody that kind of understood what we did in the pet industry.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. We have 60 people interviewed in the book, and I think some of them are in the audience right now. If you're in the book, you want to raise your hand? I know we've got several here who were interviewed in the book, so it's a pretty broad perspective. I mean, Jim is an interesting story all by himself, but then add 60 more experts to it, and it's a heck of a book. So we've got a question over here.
My question is more about the background of the business. PetSmart, Petco, remarkably similar names, same industry. How did the trademarking process go with that kind of competitor with remarkably similar names?
didn't quite get the whole thing.
How did the trademarking go between PetSmart and perhaps even the whole rivalry and the whole growth of the two between PetSmart and
question.
Petco? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a native San Diegan, and I knew about PetSmart. They had a mail order house in the Grossmont Shopping Center, and they had one store in La Mesa. And I think there was an attorney tried to hire me way back when. I talked to him. They weren't really.
This is Petco we're talking about.
Petco, that was Petco.
Gotcha.
They weren't really anything until there was a gentleman by the name of Jerry Machado opened a chain of stores up in Oregon, Beaverton, Oregon. It was called Well Pet. Jerry was I think he got like 50 cents a bag for every bag of Yukonuba this side of the Mississippi. And he did quite well. Somebody this was way before Brian Devine, somebody in a Petco got an equity firm to buy them. So they bought them. They were smaller stores. PetSmart, we probably were in business 4 or 5 years by that time, kind of moving in a different direction. Their name is always, I think Wellco or something like that before and moved Petco. They got real competitive when they got equity money, and they're good people over there. I think they do well. The direction they go in is completely different probably than all of us. I mean, they're going in a completely different direction. And maybe in California, maybe they can pull that off there. It would be tough. If I was an investor, I'd be a little bit concerned. But, does that help you? I got time.
I was just curious if there was actually a point where you guys trying to trademark PetSmart, and then when they changed their name to Petco, obviously you guys are similar. Was there an agreement you've made with Petco, like, hey, you do your thing, keep your trademark, we do our thing, we'll keep our trademark, or was there an actual legal battle involved? Or was there ever a trademarking
Were there any trademarking
problem?
issues?
No, there was never any trademarking issues. We did go to San Diego, and you got a good memory. You don't look old enough to remember this though, but there was back when we opened some stores in San Diego, and we had an issue with PetSmart and with Petco, but then that just went away. I mean, there was nothing there. They tried. No, I don't pay that much attention to them, to be honest with you. I mean, they're good. They are good people. Like each one of us, they run a different direction.
Yeah, I feel that they're on the opposite ends of the spectrum from a business perspective. PetSmart was lower margins and high volume, high turns, and Petco is high margins, low turns, trying to come up with a similar bottom line that everyone's happy and can stay in business. But how you get there, I was always more concerned as a competitor of PetSmart because of their high volume and their margins were tighter than Petco. Petco wasn't such a bad competitor for us.
Yeah, we did it 2 times, try to buy them, and it fell apart through the government, I think, the first time. And the second time, there just wasn't enough value. And PetSmart is a great company, but you get CEOs in at the beginning that really care about the customer. And then you get big and they're beholden to the investors, and you get CEOs in there more concentrated on investors than they are the customers. That's when all the small stores do well. I mean, that's what we did at Petsense.
Did you have any times where you had to make a decision between your investors and your customers?
No, I never did. In fact, when I was a chairman, I would never let the investors talk to the CEO, ever. They can tie up your CEO. They can go to the board and present it, and then the board would determine whether or not it's worth the CEO's time. CEO's job was to run the business and take care of the customers and the associates.
Awesome. Any other questions from the audience? We still have a few more minutes.
So raise your hand if you have a question.
Down here. Hold on 1 second. Here we go.
Hello. We have a product that has revolutionized the litter box. Because up until now, the litter box just held litter. We have put a material together that you peel and you stick to the box that will turn your litter box into a nature box. So by introducing this nail file, this peel and stick material that goes into the box, that you put your litter on top of it, when the cats cover, they will wear down their tips, thus preventing personal injury or furniture damage. But when I went to the PetSmart, they said that I have to have a certain level of sales before they even would talk to me. So how does a company like ours that has a great product that is designed to bring the cat closer to you, how do we introduce this product to a company like a PetSmart?
Do you have a booth here?
We do.
You get,
Yes.
yeah, I think,
Yes.
again, if I offend somebody,
Please
I'm not
do.
going to.
It's okay.
So I think in today's world, what's helped bring up some of the independent stores is some of the franchises. I think franchises have kind of set standards a little bit higher. Some of the pet stores I go in that I used to go in were pretty bad, and they're really good in today's world. They're doing good. Everything's changed. I think what you're talking about that's kind of a buyer's
Nightmare.
Where's Michael? Michael Sapp could probably answer that for us. But I think probably you have to get a little traction somewhere. And I would do it with the smaller store. If I recommend things, I would go to the smaller stores and get a little bit of traction. You can do independent, some good independent. You can do a small chain, you can do a big chain. You kind of grow into it.
Right.
And I'll give you one quick analogy. So we all know the Thunder Shirt. So Thunder Shirt, the guy from Thunder Shirt came to me about, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, and he says, I'm going to go into PetSmart. I said, don't do it. He said, they're going to, Mike wasn't there then. I said, they're going to
Turn you
They're
down.
going to want a higher margin and everything. He said, no, I'm going to do it. Well, Thunder Shirt, nobody knew what it was. He got a big order. PetSmart put it in, but they didn't put it where anybody could see what it is. They didn't know it's in a bag. So they had him pick it up. So he lost everything. He went out and went to the smaller stores and built up his clientele, and then wound up going to the bigger ones and taking. But you can't forget the ones that helped you. You really have to take care of the ones.
So baby
Amen to
steps.
that.
What's that?
Little baby steps.
I think it's. You agree?
Yeah,
I think
amen
it's
to
the only way to
the
go.
small independents are the ones that are going to set the stage.
But
for
it's
all
a
of it.
store like yours that has the educated staff, because a lot of times you walk into these independent stores and the people don't have any clue on what they're doing. But when you go into a PetSmart, they know what they're doing and they are able to direct you much more efficiently. So this is why a person like me loves going to a store like yours, because you trained your personnel to address the questions of an average person like me.
Yeah.
So education, you really did a great job.
Yeah. So on yours, on some of the buyers, they have criteria, and they have to stick by the criteria. And it's dollars per square inch, dollars per square foot,
Right.
whatever it might be. You just have to get past it. If it were a smaller package, I would say go to the buyer and say, I won't put it in the shelf because that would be taken up, but I'll put a cardboard stand up on the square footage where you're not making any money at the end of the rack. You can put one of those up, that goes into the analytics, and that will get you on the shelf
I love it. Thank you so much, Jim.
anytime.
And if I may, I just want to respond to the smaller store thing. There are many levels of education in smaller stores, but there are quite a few that are doing a really, really great job. Some of the folks at the Indie Pet Group, which we partner with the WPA, those guys are doing a great job. And we and Indie Pet are both trying to raise that level of education, take this philosophy, this educating your employee philosophy, and make it more readily available to more stores. So there still is hope for all the small stores. Any other questions?
I have a question right here. Whoa. So, PetSmart, was it ever your vision to see it become the hotel, pet hotel, the grooming salon, the training, or was it just, how did that come about?
That was evolution, and it was customers telling us what they wanted. I do remember sitting in a meeting early on, I don't know any old timers here, we had a CEO and a Sam Parker, great CEO. And we did sit down in a meeting, we talked about what we overall wanted it to be, and that would be grooming. Well, pet hotels wasn't that big of a thing, but we were talking about indoor training and the like. So I think it just kind of happened. If I were doing it today, I'd almost start with the pet hotel and build out from there, you know, all the way to food.
That's interesting. I think, Paul, we had another question over here on this side.
All right.
You doing okay?
Yeah, we're almost there.
Yes, hi. I don't know if you had the strategic or operational decision-making input, but what was the thought process behind Chewy going public and PetSmart staying private?
I mean, what?
The thought process behind Chewy going public and PetSmart staying private.
That's a good question. I think there's probably a lot of backdoor stuff going on with it. I know it's a UK company that owns PetSmart now. It's interesting that PetSmart's building, their corporate building, they're leasing it back. Probably a good way to get cash in. That's a good question. I don't know. I really don't know.
We've stumped,
Thanks for keeping up, though.
stumped Jim, but I'm sure you're going to look into it too. Any other questions from the audience?
Where can you find the book?
So the book is not published yet. The booth is right over here. And I like this turning to the book. So tell us a bit about the book. What is it? Who's it for? Who's going to learn what from it?
So the book, this has been a long time coming, and there's some people that get credit in this industry that don't, that haven't. It's always the big guys, it's always the CEOs. And so the book is designed to explain how I got started in the pet industry and then how PetSmart got started. It only goes to PetSmart until when I left, which was right after we went public, which is the most interesting part of all of it because it becomes monotonous after that. And we're going to, there's some associates that we have in that were hired way back then. And they're chiming in and what they do, they never got noticed. It's their time to have something to show their grandkids. We probably have, I don't know where Paul is, probably have as many as we could. There just seems to be that there was some of them that just weren't around anymore. But some of our first store directors, so it's about them, it's about the industry, a lot about the industry, on how we do things here, how we did them then and how we're doing it now. And we got some CEOs, seen Paul Allen, Paul's probably here somewhere, and we have Chris Rowland and a couple of CEOs talking about what they see tomorrow. Because I've been in long enough to see the evolution, and it just keeps going and going and going. Online is just starting. It's going to go. But the customer, if you talk to the customer, they like online. But when they have a pet, they like to bring their pet in somewhere. They like to bring them in where they're comfortable. Not where it's dark and not where it's dirty and not, where there's a one-track mind. Because when you talk to customers, you probably all well know, you got to be wide open in your mind and the way you think. But love pets. That's the key, and they will know. As you would know if you talk to somebody that, talk to these investment guys that, what are you talking about? Nobody's going to buy that pet stuff. Nobody's going to go to a big store. Well, I bet they wish they'd have invested way back then. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
So I like where you just went. What is the future of brick and mortar as a essential piece of this whole pie of online, in-store? What do brick and mortar folks need to be doing?
I would wake up every morning and want to get better. And that's just the way I am. But I think probably brick and mortar is always going to be there. Is it going to change? It's probably going to change a little bit. Pet owners, which is all your customers, they're going to buy some online, but they have to have a base. I would grow it out. It costs money, but Sometimes it brings in more customers. You can do, I'll tell you one thing Chewy's does and Amazon doesn't do is Chewy's will do an adoption in a city. They have the connections to do it. They have the online to be able to do it. Amazon can't do that. People with pets have a heart. They think that's cool. So I think I'd grow it out. I'd start with grooming. Grooming, I'm talking to the choir here, as you know, is hot right now. If nothing else, I'll tell you a quick story here. I might have mentioned already, but the machines, they bring in customers. They bring in customers that you might not have got before, and it's inexpensive. It's not a pain, but anything you can do to get a new customer in the store is good. Grooming will do that to some degree, but then you got to go out and you can get a mobile vet, have them stop in, they do nail trims, and the customer would pay. I mean, you probably do them free, but pay for them. But they'll do nail trims and things like that. Gets the customer to your store. Just make sure your store is pristine at that time, and your associates are up to speed. But anything you can do, you know, adoptions are a great way to go if you gotta get tied up with the right adoption people in your town. I mean, there's some good ones out there, and there's some kind of loose ones. So adoptions are really good. The thing is, if somebody adopts a pet, you got a customer for life. If you're good, you got a customer for life.
Awesome. So I've had a ball chatting with Jim. Thank you very much for doing this for us, and thank you for being here. And I would just want to remind everyone, Jim will be here right there in his booth with his book. I think there's a discount if you pre-order it and things. But if you'd like to continue the conversation, feel free to come over and say hi to Jim.
Yeah, what it is our website just went up Saturday. Paul's been working.
Petprojectthebook.com, right on the screen for you here. If you want to take a picture of it, you'll remember it.
You can't really order it over here. We have a sheet with a Q card on the back. Q card?
Thank you.
QR code.
Yeah, that's the one.
Thank you. Yeah, it has one of those on it, and it'll go right to the website. The first 200 or something like that, I'll sign them, like it's a big deal.
Hey.
Jim Dougherty, everyone.
Thank you very much. You guys are great.